A Chinese bride thought no one wanted her, until a little girl whispered, "Can you be my mommy forever?" Montana Territory, late autumn, 1883. The snow had begun to fall hours ago, thick and relentless, blanketing the train platform in a suffocating silence. The train whistle had long faded into the distance, ghosting through the white haze, but My Lin remained frozen in place. Her hands, red and trembling, clutched the handle of a worn carpet bag. She was dressed not for the biting Montana winter, but in the remnants of a life she had tried to leave behind, a tattered, traditional grey cheongsam that offered no defense against the wind. Dust and ice swirled at her boots as the last passengers disappeared down the path to town, welcomed by warm embraces and heavy coats. None had come for her. Again. My Lin sat down on a bench carved rough and cold, her spine rigid with the weight of humiliation. She pulled a letter from her sleeve, the paper creased soft at the edges, read too many times. She had memorized every line, every promise scribbled by the man who had signed his name as Preston Grady. "I have a quiet home, a warm hearth, and a place for a kind soul to belong," but no one came. There was no wagon, no invitation, only the howling silence of the frontier. From a distance, two young men leaned against a barrel, grinning behind their hands. One of them laughed aloud, his voice carrying over the wind. "There she is. The railroad girl. Thought she'd marry herself a rancher, did she?" My Lin flinched. It wasn't the first time. She had been turned away before. In the mining camps, in the crowded cities of the coast, the truth always rose like bile in their throats. Foreigner. Outsider. Even when she had tried to make an honest living washing clothes or mending silk, the whispers followed. Tears welled up, hot against the freezing wind. She lowered her head, shoulders curling in. She hadn't cried in front of anyone in years, but now she wept quietly, hopelessly, the letter crumpling in her lap. Small footsteps tapped closer, crunching softly in the snow. Then, a child's voice, bright and clear, pierced the gloom. "Are you hurt?" My Lin looked up. A girl no older than 3 stood before her, eyes wide with concern. She was a stark contrast to the grey world around them, wearing a light pink prairie dress layered under a heavy wool coat, with mittens that hung from a string around her neck. Golden curls peeked out from beneath a knit cap. My Lin wiped at her face with her sleeve, the silk damp and cold. "No. I'm just," she stopped, trying to force a smile for the child. "Just a little sad." The girl studied her seriously. "Did your daddy say no?" My Lin blinked, taken aback. "No, sweetheart." The girl tilted her head. "Do you have a husband?" My Lin shook her head. The girl tried again. "Do you have a baby?" Another small shake. My Lin managed to whisper, "Nobody wants me." The child stepped closer. Her mittened hand reached out, touching My Lin's freezing fingers with a certainty only a child could carry. She asked, "Can you be my mommy forever?" My Lin froze, her heart skipping a beat. Before she could answer, a soft, deep voice spoke from behind them. "Lily." My Lin looked up. A man had approached, quiet on his feet despite the heavy boots. He was broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and older than her by a few years. His coat was patched, his hat worn from long rides, and he had the rough look of someone who had lived through too much and said too little. In one arm, he carried a small sack of supplies. His other hand rested lightly on the child's shoulder. He nodded toward My Lin, his eye scanning her thin dress with a frown. "Sorry. She's got a soft heart." My Lin stood quickly, brushing snow from her cheongsam. "No trouble. She just surprised me." The man's eyes lingered on the crumpled letter in My Lin's hand. "You waiting on someone?" My Lin hesitated, shame flushing her cheeks. "I was. But it seems I've been fooled again." He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes without judgment. Lily tugged at his coat. "Papa," she cried softly. His jaw tensed. He looked back at My Lin. "You've got no place to stay." "No," she said, lifting her chin slightly. "But I'll manage." He stared a moment longer, looking at the grey silk shivering in the wind, then shifted the sack to his other hand. It's freezing, and that dress won't last an hour out here. If you want a roof and some warm broth, you're welcome to rest a while. Mylin blinked. I don't even know your name. Ethan, he said. Ethan Thorne, he gestured to the path. It's not far. You can leave after supper if you still want to. Mylin looked down at Lily, who still held her hand. Then she nodded. Thank you. And just like that, she followed the man and his daughter into the cold Montana dusk. Not with hope, but with the tiniest flicker of warmth, like a match lit in a blizzard. The path to Ethan Thorne's cabin wound through thin pine and broken hills. The sky had dimmed to a bruised violet by the time they reached it. Nestled in a hollow, the house was small, one room, a low porch, smoke curling from a narrow chimney. Lily pulled her hand gently. It's warm inside, she whispered. Ethan opened the door without a word. The fire was already crackling, casting long shadows on the rough plank walls. A single bed sat against the far corner. A small table, a rocking chair, sparse but clean. You can hang your coat there, Ethan said, gesturing to a hook by the door, then realizing she had no coat, he awkwardly cleared his throat. Or sit by the fire. Mylin hesitated. I won't stay long. Ethan didn't look up from where he removed his boots. That's up to you. But I didn't invite you here to stay forever. Just the night. Mylin's cheeks flushed. I appreciate your honesty. He moved to the hearth, stirring the stew pot. And for the record, I didn't write you any letters. Mylin blinked. You're not Preston Grady. Ethan huffed a dry sound, somewhere between a laugh and a grunt. Preston Grady is a 16-year-old boy who cleans stables in town. Likes to play matchmaker with strangers' mail. Likely thought it was a joke. Mylin stared at the floor, her hands clenched around the carpet bag strap. I see, she said quietly. The cruelty of it stung worse than the cold. Lily, sensing the tension, climbed onto the bench near the fire and patted the seat beside her. You can sit here, she said. It's warmest. Mylin Saturday. They ate in near silence. Ethan said little, Mylin said less. Only Lily, with her cheerful humming and slurping, seemed untouched by the awkwardness. After supper, Mylin stood. Thank you for the meal. I should go. But before she could reach the door, Lily slipped from her seat and latched onto the grey silk of her dress. No, the child cried. You said you didn't have a house. This is 1 inch. Mylin bent down gently. Sweetheart, this isn't my house. Lily's lip trembled. It can be. Just for a little. Mylin glanced at Ethan, unsure what to say. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. She gets attached fast, he muttered. I'll sleep in the barn, Mylin said. Or by the hearth, just for tonight. Ethan didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. You can take the cot. I'll stay up. Mylin looked around, and that's when she saw it. In the corner, tucked behind a stack of folded blankets, hung a small dress, beaded, handmade, the kind worn by indigenous tribes of the plains. Beside it, a low wooden shelf held a few items, a feather, a string of turquoise, and a small pouch of dried sage. Mylin stepped closer. She was native, she asked softly. Ethan's voice came from behind her, guarded. Crow. Mylin turned. He didn't flinch. She died during the frost last year. Fever took her fast. Mylin's heart pulled tight. I'm sorry, she said. Ethan gave no reply, only added another log to the fire. Later, when Lily had drifted to sleep curled beside the dog, Mylin sat by the window with a blanket around her shoulders. Ethan spoke from across the room. You can stay just for a few days. She's calm when you're here. Mylin looked toward him. That's all right. I won't ask for more. He nodded once, then went back to his chair. Neither spoke again that night, but the fire burned low, and the cabin no longer felt like a place meant for one. It began with a shiver. Lily, who had danced barefoot in the cabin that morning, now lay curled on the cot, her skin flushed and damp. By nightfall, her breaths came in shallow gasps, her body trembling beneath the quilt. Ethan hovered beside her, eyes wide with panic. His hands, usually so steady with a hammer or rifle, now shook as he tried to press a wet cloth to her burning forehead. "She's burning up," he muttered. "I don't know what's wrong." My Lin had been sorting herbs she carried in her bag when she heard the strain in his voice. She stood quickly, crossing the room. "What happened?" "She was fine this morning," Ethan said. "Just a sniffle." Then she got quiet. Too quiet. My Lin placed her hand on Lily's cheek. The heat pulsed through the skin like fire under thin ice. "She has a fever," My Lin said calmly. "A bad one." Ethan's mouth tightened. "Can we take her to town?" "Not tonight. The storm is back, and she won't last the trip in the cold." Ethan stood, pacing. "I don't know what to do." My Lin touched his arm. "I do." He looked at her, surprised. "My father," she said, "worked on the railroads, but before that, he was a healer in Guangdong. He taught me things. Things that work when nothing else does." Ethan hesitated, looking at her foreign clothes, her foreign face. Then he looked at his daughter gasping for air. He nodded. "Do it." My Lin moved quickly. She reached into her satchel, pulling out dried roots, ginger, astragalus, and bundles of wrapped leaves. She boiled water, steeped the herbs, and crushed others into a thick paste. She worked without pause, without fear, her movement swift and sure. Ethan watched from the corner, arms crossed but tense. "She is just a child," My Lin murmured as she placed a warm herbal cloth on Lily's chest. "But she burns like she's carrying the world." "She's all I have," Ethan said hoarsely. My Lin did not answer, she kept working. She lifted Lily's head, coaxed her lips open, and dripped the bitter tea slowly past her tongue. The girl whimpered but swallowed. "She needs to sweat it out," My Lin said. "If she does, she'll break the fever before morning." The room settled into quiet, save for the crackle of fire and the occasional moan from the cot. Ethan sat on a stool, elbows on knees, eyes never leaving his daughter. "You've done this before?" he asked softly. My Lin nodded. "Many times. In the camps, doctors would not treat the Chinese workers. We had to save ourselves." Ethan's jaw twitched. "You sound more sure than most doctors I've met." "I had to be," she said simply. "Where I grew up, nobody came for us when we got sick." He studied her face, her calm, her certainty, the gentleness in her hands, and something inside him shifted. He was not used to this, being helped, being watched over. He had always been the one guarding the edges, shielding his family from pain. But tonight, it was My Lin who stood between death and his daughter. Sometime past midnight, the child stirred. Her cheeks were still flushed, but her breath no longer rasped. She opened her eyes. "Mommy," she whispered. My Lin froze. Ethan inhaled sharply. Lily reached out, fingers fumbling, until they found My Lin's hand. She gripped it tightly, then drifted back into sleep. My Lin looked at Ethan, lips parted. She doesn't understand," My Lin said quietly. Ethan's face was unreadable in the firelight, but his voice, when it came, was low. "She knows what feels safe." They sat in silence. Outside, frost clung to the windows. Inside, the girl slept, her hand in My Lin's. Ethan watched them both as if seeing a dream too fragile to speak aloud. He did not say thank you. But in the morning, when My Lin woke stiff by the hearth, she found a cup of coffee waiting on the table, fresh and poured just for her. The stars outside blinked cold and clear, scattered across the Montana sky like spilled salt. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low. My Lin sat on the porch step, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, a mug of warm tea in her hands. The night was quiet. Lily had fallen asleep hours ago. Ethan stood at the far end of the porch, arms crossed, eyes trained on the tree line. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then Mylin broke the silence. "She asked me again tonight," she said. Ethan turned. "Lily?" Mylin nodded. "She wanted to know if I had a mommy. I told her I did once. A woman who sang to the silkworms and held my hand when the monsoon rains came." Ethan leaned against the railing. "She's gone. She died when I was very young," Mylin said softly. "My father brought me to America. He thought the Gold Mountain would give us a life." She sipped the tea. "He died laying track for the Central Pacific. The explosion took him, and the company took his wages." Ethan was quiet. "I was left alone at 12, she continued. "I learned to wash, to cook, to sew. But I never stopped being what they whispered. Foreigner. Yellow peril." She smiled faintly. "I tried to find work in the towns, but no one wants a Chinese girl unless it is for things I would not do." Ethan sat down on the other end of the step. "I filled out that form for the mail-order bride agency," Mylin said, her voice tightening. "It seemed foolish. But I thought maybe someone out there would see past the face, past the blood." Ethan looked at her, long and quiet. "I didn't write you," he said finally. Mylin gave a half smile. "I know." They sat in silence. Then Ethan spoke, his voice low. "I knew a man once who said blood tells the truth of a person." Mylin glanced sideways. "You believe that?" "I did," Ethan said. "Then I married a woman the town called a savage. My wife, Kaya. She was Crow. She had eyes that laughed at me even when her mouth didn't." He stared out into the darkness. "When I brought her back to town, they stared. Whispered that she'd put a spell on me. That our child wouldn't belong to God." Mylin felt her breath catch. "When winter came 3 years ago, I went out to find supplies," Ethan said, the weight of the memory pressing him down. "When I came back, the house was cold. Kaya was gone. Fever took her, but it was the isolation that killed her. No one would come to help a sick Indian woman." He looked at Mylin. "I buried her beneath the cedar tree. Told myself I'd raise Lily alone so no one could take anything else from me. I stopped choosing love. I chose survival." Mylin sat still, her hands clenched. "I understand," she whispered. "I didn't come here to fall in love either," Mylin said. "I just wanted a place where I wouldn't have to say sorry for existing." They looked at each other for a long moment. Nothing romantic passed between them, no brush of fingers, no sudden declarations, only the simple, raw understanding of two people who had survived being unwanted. "She would have liked you," Ethan said after a moment. Mylin smiled faintly. "She made a beautiful daughter. She was the strongest woman I ever met," Ethan said. Mylin looked at the snow-covered ground. "Then I'll make sure her daughter grows up knowing that." Ethan stood, crossed toward the door, paused, and turned back. "You don't have to stay. I know that. But if you do, you won't owe me anything." "I'm not here to be owed," Mylin replied. "I'm just here." Another silence. But this one didn't ache. It settled around them like a blanket, warm with something like peace. The wind had shifted by mid-afternoon, becoming colder, sharper, with a whisper of fresh snow in its teeth. Mylin had just finished hanging a blanket to dry when she realized the yard was too quiet. "Lily?" No answer. Mylin dropped the blanket, eyes scanning the field. The gate near the tree line stood open. Panic clawed up her throat. She ran, her worn boots pounding across the frozen ground, calling the child's name. "Lily!" She found the little footprints by the stream first, then the pink ribbon from the dress snagged on a thorn bush. And then, a splash, a scream. "Help!" Mylin's heart stopped. Down by the edge of the creek, Lily flailed in the ice-cold water, swept by the current, her small hands grasping for a branch, slipping. "Hold on!" My Lin yelled, already tearing off her heavy borrowed coat, not thinking, only moving. The water was a blade of winter, it stabbed through her skin, her chest, her spine. She gasped but kept going, wading into the freezing mud as she reached for Lily. "Come here! I've got you!" Lily sobbed, clinging as My Lin grabbed her under the arms, heaving her toward a half-submerged rock. She pushed the child up with every bit of strength she had left. "Stay there! Hold tight!" Lily clutched the rock, trembling. But My Lin, her foot caught between two underwater stones, could not pull free. She tried, pulled, kicked, but the pain shot through her ankle, up her leg. Her arms burned from the cold. Her breath came in ragged gasps. The last thing she saw was Lily's face, pale and wet, eyes wide with terror. Then, the world went dark. Ethan heard the scream just as he reached the cabin. He dropped the bag of feed and ran. No coat, no weapon, only instinct and dread. He followed the trail, his boots crushing the snow. Then he saw them. Lily sobbing on the rock. My Lin floating limp in the stream. He waded in without a word, the water up to his thighs, arms burning. He grabbed My Lin first, pulling her against him, then reached for Lily. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice shaking. "I've got you. I've got you both." The fire roared high that night. Ethan wrapped My Lin in every dry blanket he owned. He stripped off her wet clothes with trembling hands, never looking where he did not need to. Her skin was ice, her lips blue. He held her close, body to body, whispering, "Stay with me, My Lin. Come back." Lily lay asleep nearby, warm and safe now, fingers curled around My Lin's shawl. Ethan stayed awake the entire night, feeding the fire, rubbing warmth back into My Lin's limbs. "Please don't leave me," he whispered. He did not cry, but something in his voice broke. By morning, she stirred. Her eyes blinked open slowly, unfocused. Then she saw him. "Lily," she rasped. "She's safe," Ethan whispered, brushing damp hair from her face. "Because of you." My Lin swallowed hard, her body shook. "I couldn't let her go." "I know," he said, his voice cracking. "You saved my daughter. You could have died." My Lin looked at him for a long time. "I'd do it again." Ethan bowed his head. For a moment, he could not speak. Then, very softly, "Don't ever leave again, My Lin. Don't. Please." She touched his hand weakly, her fingers curling around his. "I wasn't planning to." And for the first time, Ethan did not just see a woman who had arrived by mistake. He saw someone who had chosen to stay. Someone who already belonged. When My Lin awoke fully, it was still dark outside. The fire had died down to embers. Lily was the first to move. She had been sitting quietly by My Lin's side, holding a ragged doll. The moment My Lin stirred, Lily's eyes lit up. She cried, scrambling up onto the cot and wrapping both arms around her. "You woke up." My Lin, still groggy and weak, blinked as the small body pressed into her chest. "Sweetheart." Lily pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. "Can you be my mommy forever?" The same question. The same tiny voice. But this time, My Lin did not flinch. She pulled the child close again, holding her tightly. Her arms shook, not from the cold anymore, but from the weight of something she had never dared to want. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes. Yes, baby. If you'll have me, I will." Lily nodded fiercely, as if sealing a sacred promise, and snuggled under the blanket beside her. My Lin held her like she'd been born to. At the doorway, Ethan stood silent. He had heard it all. He did not interrupt. He did not move. Only when Lily drifted off again did he step outside into the cold. The stars above the cabin flickered behind drifting clouds. Snow had begun to fall again, light, silent, as if the sky were blessing the earth gently. After a while, My Lin rose carefully from the bed. She wrapped herself in a shawl and stepped out onto the porch. Her feet made soft sounds across the wooden planks. Ethan stood with his back to her. My Lin stood beside him. They said nothing at first. Then Ethan cleared his throat. "I ain't much for speeches," he said. "And I ain't got much. Not like others." My Lin watched him, waiting. "I didn't send that letter," he continued. "Didn't plan for this. For you." "I know," she said softly. Ethan hesitated. His hand rose to rake through his hair. "But when I saw you holding her. When I heard what you said to her tonight," he turned to face her. "I don't got silver rings or preacher's vows. I've got this porch. A fire that doesn't always stay lit. A fence that still needs mending," he swallowed. "But if what you want is a place to stay, if what you need is not to be alone, then I've got that. I've got this. I've got her. And I want to have you, too. If you'll let me." My Lin's heart tightened. Her throat ached with everything she wanted to say, but all that came out was, "Ethan." He looked down, unsure, waiting for rejection. She reached for his hand. "I don't want just a porch," she said. "Or a roof. Or someone who lets me stay." Her fingers squeezed his gently. "I want a family." Ethan's eyes filled with something he hadn't shown anyone in years. Behind them, the door creaked open and Lily tumbled out into the cold, bare feet on wood, her little arms flung wide. "My mommy and papa," she shouted, spinning in a circle, laughing as the snow touched her face. Ethan reached down and scooped her up, settling her between them. My Lin wrapped her arms around both. And in that moment, beneath the falling snow, beneath the worn beams of the cabin porch, they weren't three broken people anymore. They were one whole thing. A family. The wind carried the scent of dry sage and sweet grass across the open plains. It was early autumn, a year since that cold day at the train station. My Lin stood in the doorway of their cabin, one hand resting gently on her round belly. Her second child was due any day now. The cabin had changed. Ethan had added a second room, patched the roof, and built shelves for My Lin's drying herbs and glass jars of salves. A small sign hung above the door, "Thorn and Lin, Herbs and Help." At first, the townsfolk kept their distance. But My Lin never turned anyone away. Children came first, curious about the strange woman who knew which roots cured a stomach ache. Then came the mothers, asking quietly for remedies. Then old men with aching knees. No one whispered "foreigner" anymore. They said Miss My and meant it. Ethan watched it all unfold with quiet reverence. He was still a man of few words until Lily was involved. Then his voice turned into something else entirely, light. And today, beneath a sky streaked with amber clouds, something long overdue was happening. They were getting married. No church, no preacher, just a wide field brushed with gold grass and a handful of neighbors who had once whispered but now brought honey and cloth as gifts. My Lin wore a dress she had sewn herself, soft brown cotton trimmed with lace, but with a collar that rose high in the style of her homeland. Ethan waited for her beneath the sycamore tree. Lily ran ahead, wearing her pink dress, now slightly short at the ankles, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Ethan's hands trembled as My Lin approached. He had fought wars and faced down winters, but this made his knees weak. They stood face to face. "I don't have rings," Ethan said, voice low. "And I don't have a name that ever meant safety." My Lin reached out, taking his calloused hand. "I don't need safety," she said. "I just need home." She looked at Lily, who smiled with pride. "I used to be a woman no one chose. A girl passed over. But today," she placed her hand on her belly. "Today, I am part of a family." They kissed beneath the tree. There was no music, but Lily hummed something sweet as the sun dipped behind the hills. That night, My Lin's labor began. Ethan did not sleep. He paced, fetched water, and when the moment came, he caught his child, his son, with hands that had once only known the trigger of a gun. My Lin, sweat on her brow, looked up at him. He held the baby close, tears in his beard. "You were not a mistake," he whispered. "You are my choice. Every day." In the morning, Lily tiptoed into the room. She clambered onto the bed beside her mother and stared wide-eyed at the swaddled bundle. "Come meet your brother," My Lin smiled sleepily. Lily leaned close and kissed the baby's cheek. Then she turned to her mother. "Mama, you picked me, right?" My Lin blinked. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Lily touched the baby's hand. "I wasn't born in your tummy. But you still picked me. Like him. Like Papa picked you." My Lin's heart squeezed. She pulled both children into her arms. "Yes," she said. "I chose you. Papa chose me. And now we all choose each other. No one's left behind here." Outside, Ethan was tending the garden, humming softly. From where My Lin sat, she could see him bend and pull a weed, then glance toward the window. He smiled. And in that simple, quiet moment, My Lin knew this was a life no one could take from her. It had been built not from what the world gave, but from what they chose to give each other. The story of My Lin, Ethan, and Lily teaches us that family is not defined by bloodlines, but by the conscious choice to love and protect one another. It reminds us that true strength is found not in hardening our hearts against the world, but in remaining open to love despite past rejections and prejudices. My Lin's journey from an outcast to a beloved matriarch shows that our value is not determined by how others see us, but by the kindness and resilience we carry within. Through their shared brokenness, the characters found a wholeness that defied societal expectations, proving that love often grows best in the most unlikely of soils. It is a testament to the healing power of belonging and the enduring truth that home is not a place, but the people who choose to stay when the winter comes. Ultimately, it teaches us that we all deserve a second chance at happiness, no matter where we come from or what we have endured. What did you think of My Lin's decision to stay even after finding out the letter was fake? Do you think Ethan did the right thing by letting her into his life so quickly? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story warmed your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of love and resilience in the Wild West. Thank you for watching.